Ukraine is forming and equipping new mechanized and armored brigades as part of a wider plan to recruit and draft fresh troops, potentially hundreds of thousands of them, as Russia's wider war on the country grinds toward its third year and Republican lawmakers in the United States delay badly needed military aid. The new units include 5 mechanized brigades: the 150th, 151st, 152nd, 153rd and 154th, and a tank brigade, the 5th, that until recently lacked tanks. The mechanized brigades have troops and small arms but, until last week, it was unclear what vehicles they might operate. A video that the Ukrainian Defense Ministry posted on December 12 hints that the 154th Brigade is getting captured, ex-Russian T-62 tanks. The 1960s vintage T-62 is one of the oldest tanks in the wider war. But it should surprise no one that both armies, the Russian and Ukrainian, more and more are counting on aged tanks to lend firepower to newly formed units. In 22 months of hard fighting, the Russians have lost around 2,500 tanks. The Ukrainians have lost 700. For both armies, those losses represent around 2/3 of the tanks they had at the start of the wider war in February 2022. Neither side can build, or acquire from abroad, enough modern tanks to make good its losses. Both sides increasingly depend on old tanks they pull out of storage or, in Ukraine's case, capture from Russia. The Kremlin reactivated hundreds of T-62s starting last year, and has done everything it can to mitigate the tank's worst flaws. A video that circulated on social media late last month depicts a Russian T-62 with explosive reactive armor blocks, an anti-drone cage and front-mounted mine plows. The up-armored, mine-clearing T-62 showed up on social media just a few days after photos appeared online depicting one of the most upgraded T-62s. This variant of the 4-person, 42-ton tank has reactive armor that technicians apparently borrowed from a modern T-90 tank, plus a modern-ish 1PN96M T-02 gunner's sight for its 115mm main gun. If there's a downside to these add-ons, it's that the T-62s all apparently still have their original 620 horsepower diesel engines, which produce much less power than a modern tank engine produces. An improved T-62 also is a heavier and slower T-62. The ex-Russian T-62s the Ukrainian 154th Mechanized Brigade apparently operates lacks these updates. But extra armor might be in the works. The Ukrainians, like the Russians, tend to add explosive reactive armor to their tanks. The German-made Leopard 1A5s the newly equipped 5th Tank Brigade is getting, 1960s tanks that underwent deep upgrades in the 1990s, purportedly already are in line for the add-on armor. If the front line in Ukraine is starting to feel like a time warp for tankers, with more and more upgraded 1960s vintage tanks rolling into battle, you're not wrong. Don't fixate on the tanks, however.